Early in his prophetic career, Muhammad condemned female infanticide. Later revelations would give women legal rights in marriage, allow them to divorce, and protect their inheritance rights.
Of course, it's absurd and anachronistic to expect Muhammad to be a feminist in the 21st century sense. But nevertheless, what he did for women in the context of his time was amazing.
Although most women were second-class citizens in pre-Islamic Arabia, Muhammad's own wife, Khadija, was wealthy and powerful.
There's been this idea that women prior to Islam were chattel, that they had no rights. And I think that for many, many levels of the women, that is true. But for a certain level of woman, which Khadija would have been amongst, that is not true.
Khadija is an inspiration because in spite of the male-dominated society that she lived in, she was a working woman. And so there are some parallels for modern women to learn from her example. I grew up in Kashmir, which is in the foothills of the Himalayas in northern India. And I came to America when I was 15 years old. As I started becoming part and parcel of this culture and society, I gravitated towards just wanting to be like everybody else and tended to stray away from my own faith. And for a while there, I went through some very, very dark stages in my life where I wanted nothing to do with my faith. And I almost just walked away from my faith. And as I got older, I recognized that there was this very empty hole inside of me. So I started searching for God in all kinds of places. You know, Rumi has this beautiful story where he says, I looked for God, I went to a temple and I didn't find him there. Then I went to a church and I didn't find him there. And then I went to a mosque and I didn't find him there. And then finally I looked in my heart and there he was. The challenges that I faced in my life are the very same challenges that a lot of young girls are facing. And when they come to me with their questions, I feel like a person who has already traveled the road. I dispense advice to them from real experience as to how I would have dealt with something.
I've noticed how when it comes to women, we are only supposed to marry Muslim men. Why is that now? Especially because the Quran says that believing men and women should marry believing men and women. It doesn't point out that men can marry such and women can't.
I've heard plenty of people say that. In fact, that's interpretation.
Some of the issues are deeply personal. Issues with gender relations like dating and marriage. And other issues have to do with certain Islamic law and how to reconcile with some of those things.
I want to change with her. See, hers is prettier.
And these are all sticky wickets, as we say. The fact that I've walked the walk helps a little bit for me to dispense advice to these people. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah.
In Mecca, opposition to Muhammad was growing. His message of monotheism and his campaign against idolatry threatened the lucrative trade that fueled the Meccan economy.
The business of Mecca is to draw pilgrims to Mecca. They want to make money. And the way they draw pilgrims to Mecca is people come visit their gods. Well, here's somebody who's saying, these gods, they're not real. They're stones, they're rocks. You're wasting your time. Now, that message has economic implications to the Quraysh. They're worried. This man is going to undermine our business.
In the tribal system, Muhammad was protected by his uncle, Abu Talib. So the Meccans went to Abu Talib and asked him to turn Muhammad over to them.
Abu Talib was in a difficult position. He was not a Muslim, but it went against the grain for him to simply hand over his beloved nephew to these people who would kill him with impunity. So he took Muhammad to one side and said, look, don't do this to us. Can't you just keep quiet?
And at that point, the Prophet says, if they put the sun in my right hand and the moon in my left hand, I will not stop preaching what I am preaching until this message is conveyed or I die conveying it. And this is what he tells his uncle. And at that point, he begins to weep. And his uncle looks at him and realizes the depth of the conviction of this man. And he says, say whatever you want. You have my protection.